So as we increasingly make division points on this globe and define ourselves and our identity by these ever slighter differences, we break down our understanding of what our purpose is within community. And one of the really fascinating, beautiful things that we've seen that really changed the course of my career is what happens in soil, whether that's on the ground that you walk on and grow your food or the soil of your gut. But in 2012, my chemotherapy research had been looking at the communication network between mitochondria, which are these little microorganisms that live inside human cells. They have their archaea, they're these ancient bacteria that are absorbed into a larger bacteria, and then both are thriving within a human cell. And so the ovum that goes to the fertilization that will become a human is full of mitochondria. And there's extreme variation of biodiversity in the mitochondria. In fact, way more than typically seen in bacteria, fungi, and the like. These mitochondria can show up with, you may have 200 to 2,000 mitochondria in a single cell, and within that, you may have hundreds of variants of the genomic information within those mitochondria. And so there's this just diversity within every single cell of these microorganisms. And my study of chemotherapy and cancer was understanding that the breakdown in this communication network, when the cell phone tower loses its power potential in the mitochondria and you can't get the signal out, you develop cancer. You can't kill the cell, and it goes on to do what we believe is this, malignant process, when in fact it's a cell that just can't get its communication out or can't receive communication correctly. And when you put in something like super high dose vitamin A that triggers a big communication event, you can get that cell to kill itself, realizing that it's a cancer cell. And so as soon as it has enough information, it knows exactly what to do for the greater good of the whole. And so it was with some astonishment in 2012, after I'd left the university and was running a nutrition center in rural Virginia, a very impoverished community. I was trying to find a curriculum of nutrition that would work in food deserts to help reverse chronic disease. And the food wasn't working. We were pounding people with kale and Brussels sprouts and all the right things, and we were seeing inflammation go up. And it took a number of years before I believed that these people were actually eating what I asked them to eat. And to find out that the nutrition was capable of increasing inflammation was mind-blowing to me. And what we found as we drilled down into the soil in which that food was growing is that there was another communication network in the soil. And so just as we had seen communication happening between mitochondria, we uncovered in 2013 this communication network between bacteria and fungi in the soil systems. And fascinatingly, the herbicides and pesticides that we've used for our food system over the last decades has collapsed the cell phone communication there in the extracellular space. And so we started there asking, what are the bacteria and fungi doing? And in their production of this wireless communication network, they were creating the capacity for cell-cell communication and intracellular communication on the human level to happen. And so similar to, per se, a cell phone that you've got in your hand, perhaps, in there is a transmitter and a receiver that always works. But if you're further away than 7 miles from the closest 4G tower, you don't have reception. Cell phone can't update its information, can't connect to the calendar, can't reach grandma by phone, and so you become an isolated organism. In the same way, when the extracellular matrix loses its bacterial and fungal communication network because of the antibiotic use in the environment, we get isolation at the human cell level. And the very first thing that happens at the human level when you lose that is a reduction in the capacity to make the proteins that give you self-identity. And so when you lose communication, you lose self-identity by losing what we call tight junctions. These are like the Velcro that hold the barrier systems together. So your gut membrane is the largest barrier in the body, but after that, the blood-brain barrier and the vascular system, the kidney tubules, these vast systems of bioidentity are eroded as soon as that telecommunication goes down that are made by bacteria and fungi. And so it's showing us a really eloquent truth about life, is that at the foundation of life has to be communication. And if you perturb communication, the first thing that you're going to lose is self-identity. And you don't really get a fluent communication network in that microbial space until you get biodiversity. And so once you get 5 million species of fungi and 30,000 species of bacteria and 300,000 species of parasites, all of these make a slightly different version of these carbon molecules that produce the communication network. And so as a whole, they will produce what is the equivalent of a liquid circuit board for nature to communicate through. But if you start to undermine biodiversity, you lose communication, you lose self-identity, you become isolated, and you become a cancer cell. And I would argue that humanity has become the cancer on the surface of this planet, and we're sucking the energy out of the planet just as a tumor would out of the body of a human, through which that isolation has caused the death.